How to identify a Yamashita treasure sign or marker. Identifying a Yamashita treasure sign or marker is the most crucial step in hunting for the treasures hidden by the Japanese Imperial Army during the Second World War. This important aspect is really what's lacking for most amateur treasure hunters. You have to know that nature itself can also craft symbols and strange objects, particularly on rocks and trees. Due to this reason, they are referred as natural signs or markers. Since natural signs are randomly created by nature, they really have nothing to do with any of the hidden Yamashita treasures. The worst part is when amateur treasure hunters encounter them, and then they end up excavating the site. And of course, the result will be very disappointing, that they may end up quitting. One of you guys has sent me a private message asking how exactly you can identify a legit Yamashita treasure sign and marker. This is the main reason why I immediately produced this video, because I think it will benefit most of you guys who are just starting out on this treasure hunting industry. Man-made or natural. Distinguish the sign or marker if it is natural or man-made. I have already covered this topic on my previous video. So in case you still haven't watched it, then I suggest that you should. The link to the video can be found on the description. To distinguish a certain sign or marker, if it is natural or man-made, you need to study them carefully, particularly how they got formed. You should also take a photo of the sign or marker so that you can use it as a reference, unless you have a very good photographic memory. Let's say for example that you found an engraved heart-shaped sign on the surface of a huge old rock. What you need to do next is to survey the other places of the area and search for similar type of rocks. Let's assume that you found one similar type of rock nearby, but this one has random lines that are engraved on its surfaces, which is a natural feature of the rock. What you need to do here is to make comparison on this rock from the other rock that you suspect as a treasure sign. Study their differences, if the way they got carved is the same. If it is the same, then the engraved sign that you found is natural, which means that it should not be considered as an authentic Yamashita treasure sign. However, if there is a noticeable difference, then it can be considered as a legit, man-made treasure sign. Anyway, being able to distinguish man-made signs or markers from the natural made really takes some time and practice. Thus, if you are an amateur treasure hunter, it is actually best to start by learning how to distinguish signs and markers. Once you are able to do this, the next step is to learn how to properly interpret their meanings. Arrangements of the signs and markers. The objects used by the Japanese Imperial Army as markers to their hidden Yamashita treasures have some strange arrangements, but they aren't too obvious enough to the untrained eyes. One good example is a group of old rocks or trees that are arranged in perfect triangle. Aside from the triangle, there are also arrangements where they are aligned in circle, rectangle, and straight line. Now, try to ask yourself if it is by coincidence that nature had arranged these objects in such kind of formation. The chances are very low where there are possibly human interventions. It is known that the Japanese Imperial Army had planted trees as markers, and so has moved huge rocks into their intended locations. As for the arrangements of the signs, you have to know that you have to read them in their proper order. This is the reason why it is highly advisable not to move signs that you discovered, because their original positions are very important. If moving them cannot be avoided, then you should at least remember their original positions. Or much better, you should take a photo of them. This also goes the same with the markers that can be moved around. Signs and markers deep under the ground. Let's say, for example, that you recovered an engraved turtle sign on the surface of a rock under the ground at a depth of 30 feet. Or, you uncovered bottles at a depth of 45 feet. You should ask yourself, what are these objects doing at such kind of depth under the ground? The answer to the question is simple. The Japanese Imperial Army had intentionally placed them there with a purpose. They are actually signs and markers to keep you informed that you are still following the correct directions. Moreover, there are many other ways on how treasure hunters can identify legit Yamashita treasure signs and markers that I have not covered on this video. It is really hard for me to explain them, because it is quite complicated. But to make it short and simple, it is more about experience. The more you try and study every signs and markers that you encounter, you will somehow gain the knowledge yourself of being able to identify their authenticity. If you are looking for a shortcut, then you should go look for yourself a good mentor who already has a lot of experience and success in treasure hunting. Anyway, if you have any questions with regards to this topic, then feel free to ask them on the comment form below. Moreover, have you enjoyed watching this video? If your answer is yes, and you are new to my channel, then you may want to subscribe, and hit the like button. You are also free to share to your friends, or to someone who may find it helpful. If you prefer a reading material about treasure hunting, then I recommend visiting my blogging website at treasurehunt.club. Thank you very much for watching, and happy treasure hunting.